Hello and welcome to this episode of the Practical Creative Podcast, where I talk to my guests about the how and why of creativity. As an actor and an artist, I've developed my own creative process, but I'm fascinated by how others approach their work, comparing notes on how they manage their energy and mindset, how they think about their work, why they've chosen a particular material or process, and so much more. And in this season of The Practical Creative, I'm exploring the idea of play, speaking with my guests about the role of play in their work and their lives, and what it is that we can all gain by incorporating a little more fun into our own practices. I'm Jeremiah Krage, and in this episode I'm speaking with Magnus Goransson. Magnus works at Lego as design director in the Creative Play Lab, where he works with teams to design and develop the toys of the future. And his work is informed by a huge and constantly growing body of research conducted by Lego into both how and why children play. And in this conversation, we cover a wide range of topics, including how Lego fosters a culture of play amongst its employees, and this makes it sound like the best place in the world to work, the benefits of working in teams to prevent and overcome creative blocks, the reality of designing products for a major corporation, particularly as a creative person, and how this can lead to burnout, why adults prefer to have hobbies rather than admitting to playing. We also talk about how Magnus managed to find alternative outlets for his own creativity as he moved from being a hands-on designer to a director, and this was particularly fascinating. And as always, we finish with a challenge, and Magnus has left us with a fantastic one, to really engulf yourself in play. So please enjoy. So the first question I ask my guests is to introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Magnus Goransson, and I'm a Swedish citizen living in Denmark in the town of Billund, which is where the headquarters of Lego is. And I am the design director at a department called Creative Play Lab. And what Creative Play Lab does is try to create the future of play. So we're kind of looking very broadly across socioeconomic movements and tech trends and pushing forward characters and worlds that seem relevant within those new trends. And we create concepts and suggestions that we try to get buy-in from the larger organization. So we're trying to find those new golden nuggets to keep Lego growing and keep impacting children all over the world.
So what does a typical day look like for someone who's trying to create the future of play, of what children will be playing with, say, 5 years down the line? How do you go about even thinking in that way?
Yeah, that's of course a very hard question to answer. But I mean, Lego is a big company, so we operate from just taking a step back and looking at it. We operate as a lot of big innovative companies. So we have a bunch of projects running on different maturity stages, some looking for insights, some closer to execution, some trying to break into new business models. So it's a very, I don't like the word agile, but it is very flexible organization trying to cover a lot of bases at the same time. So it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of workshops, it's a lot of stakeholder management meetings, and trying to build the best possible cases and helping the teams build their cases. And yeah, doing all that while keeping the creativity and the play flowing in the organization.
I find that really interesting because I think there's a really interesting parallel between some of the things that you were just saying in terms of the role that you have balancing those very practical, business-oriented skills and the mindset that comes with that with a playful and creative output as well. And as a lot of my listeners are, quite often they're solo practitioners who have to do that themselves on obviously a much smaller scale, balancing holding on to an awareness of market and branding and promotion, as well as still being able to go into the studio and not carry too much of that with them as they're trying to innovate and create whatever it is that they're doing. How do you Do you have to separate the two out? How do you strike that balance between still being able to create work and not feel too much pressure, or not allow that awareness of, say, stakeholders and the larger organization to crush you at the innovative spark, the creative spark, the playful spark?
Yeah. Well, I think as a designer, and I guess that's the big difference between designers and artists, it's that we have a lot of stakeholders that we need to kind of not please, but get on board along this journey that we're kind of taking off on, creating the future of play or play experience. So it's not like we try to shut ourselves off or not listen and not be affected. It's about being smart about how you get affected and knowing how you can convince people to understand what you're saying. So it's not like an artist where you kind of leave the perception of the piece to the recipient. We need to get the recipient to co-create with us. We need to get the rest of the organization on board. And the better we get them on board, the better we can stay true to that artistic vision. So instead of pushing away, we need to pull in. We need to pull in the considerations of economical and even political sometimes, but yeah, definitely internal politics to make things happen.
So, as a designer, then, with that responsibility, how much time do you get to spend in a hands-on way actually focusing on designing and creating new products?
Well, I unfortunately don't get to spend that much time anymore, and it's one of the drawbacks of becoming a higher level manager within a design organization is that you're trying to facilitate and lift and grow the design organization beneath you to kind of go in the direction that you want, but you're not so much meddling maybe in the everyday creation. I try to be involved in some projects, most of the time kind of still feeling that because I'm a creative from birth, I guess. It's always been within me. So that step, taking that manager step, is actually some kind of sorrow that you have to deal with as a creative and find your creative outlets somewhere else than in your daily work. But then, of course, you get satisfaction also when you see people grow, when you see people develop, and you see new concepts and new solutions that hopefully are better than the ones that I could create. I mean, that's kind of what I want to see is like, the people in my teams outperforming whatever I could do, because that's kind of when I can feel that I succeeded in growing them beyond my skills.
And so, are there things that you are doing within the Creative Play Lab, or possibly Lego more broadly, that helps to create an environment that encourages people to be more playful or more creative, that helps to spur that process of innovation?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of things actually, and then there's some things that happen natural here. So we can start with the things that we do. I mean, we are very aware of that we're in the toy industry and that we're all about play. So as a company, we set aside time to kind of embrace that and do playing, both official time and unofficial time. So an example of an official thing is that Lego has something called the Play Day. And that's something, it's a full day and it involves every single employee at Lego. So everything shuts down, all the factories. We're about 18,000 people. So globally, every single office shuts down and we gather to these play days where it's a big event. So it's not just gathering. It's actually arranged a lot of different activities. So for example, last year we took over one of the parking garages here in Billund, which is a 5-story building, big space, and every level had a different theme. So yes, there was a lot of Lego that you can just like swim in oceans of Lego, but there were also like RC car racing and balloon popping, and it was like a carnival with different activities, painting, finger painting, building mosaics. So that's something that we do as a whole company. And then something else that we try to do is create a playful atmosphere here at the office. And of course, this place is packed with toys, both with Lego toys and with every competitor toy you can find. That was quite overwhelming, actually, stepping into the office for the first time, and just being, the visual impression of walking into this place is just like, oh my God, there are so many toys in this building. So that kind of helps. And then, of course, just the furniture and the arrangement of the spaces try to facilitate this playful attitude, the colors, the decorations. So there's something about that work environment as well. And then I touched on the unofficial things, and there are a lot of wars, or maybe we should cut out because that's another brand.
Right.
But
foam-based battles.
Yeah, foam-based gun or shooting games. So there's this thing where different departments kind of gang up, and then there is a battle somewhere in the building going after some other department, and everybody pulls out these foam guns from underneath their desks. I mean, some departments have gone totally overboard with this, and they have like stacks of these shooters, different sizes, and some of the things that, I mean, when we travel a lot, going to different cultures and seeing how they play, and during that time we also buy a lot of toys. So there's a constant flow of toys coming back, and the strangest toys from Asia and the US that you can maybe find in the local supermarket here. And in some cases, people buy these extreme robots that you just see walking around here, and then all of a sudden you get shot by a foam arrow in the back. So there is something about that unofficial, okay to play anytime. You see people trying out prototypes, flying airplanes or balloons, or crash testing things, building roller coasters, shooting off Lego wagons and see how far they can fly. So there's a lot of things like that happening all the time that kind of creates this very open atmosphere to any kind of play.
So how culturally, how is that? How is the balance struck between having that kind of space for playful fun that doesn't have a clear agenda, that it is creating an environment or a culture of playfulness, but still ensuring that work gets done, that it doesn't tip into a space where people are just having fun all the time and none of the work gets done?
I think that there's no real, like in some other companies not making toys, maybe that would be an issue. But here, I mean, we're really encouraging anybody to understand what it is to play in any type of way. So if people want to play a full day with roller coasters, do it, because that's understanding our client. That's understanding how kids think by doing it yourself. But then, of course, this is a serious business. I mean, we're a big company with a lot of turnover and big goals. So you could maybe expect that there would be like this business side that looks down onto this more silly type of part of the company. But this whole building that I'm in right now is about 900 people in, and there's a lot of business people here. But they're also here because of play. They're also here because they want to change the future kid, or create the memories of the kids growing up so that they have these possibilities to develop skills like understanding architecture or understanding that they can build, they can become, they can create these worlds or characters that will define them in the future. They will remember those moments. So even the business people, they're very, you can see some people here with the tie and a strict jacket on. There are not too many, but they would never look down on this. They would say that this is why we're good at what we do. It's because we do this, and they understand that. So it is really a full on understanding of that playing is actually becoming better at making toys.
Hmm. So when you have a group of people who are setting out to create a new product, I would imagine that in any creative endeavor, there will come a point where people might feel stuck, that's a universal part of the process. Is there anything that you do to help people move past that point of blockage or feeling stuck in moving a project forward?
Yeah, I mean, writer's block or artistic blocks, I mean, you get it all the time in the creative businesses. The difference here is that we always operate in teams. So we're never a solo designer kind of using up the fuel of creativity, because that's constantly being refueled or questioned or put to the test or given more input. So it never becomes a problem because of the way we work with the teams and the different skill sets and personalities that we put into the teams. Sometimes projects themselves hit walls. Like we pursue this to the point where we cannot find any other solution, and it's not good enough as it is. And I mean that's a part of the creative or the innovative process. It's just like not everything makes it through. Actually, quite few things make it through. So it's just an inherent part of being working with innovation is that yes, you will hit a wall, but it's not going to be your personal wall running out of inspiration. It's going to be a wall of either a business case or a solution that's just not fulfilling our requirements.
Okay, and so but there's also a support structure that helps keep people moving forward.
Since we're working with agile teams, also if a team would get stuck, then we would try to switch the team up, put some new people in there, maybe do something else, maybe go to a conference about something adjacent, like a furniture show or something, kind of finding that new fuel and like running it until we know that this is not going to go any further. This is dead now. So we don't give up that easily just because maybe the first teams get stuck. Then we kind of try to switch people to fuel it again.
Yeah.
But even so, most of the projects do fail.
I'm sorry, did you say most of the projects do fail?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like using the word. I mean, you've seen, I've done some talks about failure. And it's the wrong word. I mean, you can maybe say they didn't make it, or they were overruled by something that was better. But if we start 10 projects, I would say that maybe 20 or 30% maximum is going to hit the market in a couple of years. And that's just the normal hit rate from trying to push the envelope, trying to be innovative. So it's not something that's unique to toys. It's something that you see in all R&D organizations. Or I've seen, I've probably been in more than 500 projects since I started working as a designer. And I think maybe there's 50 to 70 products out on the market that I actually worked on. So it's something inherent in the design world. because you have all those demands that is put on the solutions that you put forward.
Yeah. So what keeps you and your teams motivated to continue to pursue something that they know may not come to fruition?
Yeah, that's a constant thing, actually, and it is something that we're very well aware of. That it's easy to burn out in organizations like this, because if you're unlucky, you might be going 5 years without anything that you've been working on actually hitting the market. And it's something that you need to handle, like also on a personal level, being a designer or being in an innovative department, that's the nature of it. But of course, it's very frustrating on a personal level. And I can only turn to myself, which I try to do as much as I can. And I remember this from my first 5 years. I'm like, come on. I mean, I've been working for so long and nothing. I can't tell anybody I know, like, I worked on this, and point to a thing or a service or anything. And it becomes very frustrated. But it's actually just after the first thing. When the first thing launched, you can always point to that. So you can see the frustration in the very young designers, especially the one coming straight from school, that they're looking for that thing to hold on to and claim, I made that. That's why they became designers, to make things. So until that thing happens, it can be very frustrating. But yeah, we try to handle it. I mean, we try to talk about it a lot. We try to create an atmosphere where we succeed together, where we celebrate the successes, even if maybe you weren't on the team that made exactly that. You're still a part of this department, and since you're part of this department, you're also part of the success. So it's about maybe trying to help people zoom out and see them as a part of a whole, either our department, the Creative Play Lab, or even Lego, as what kind of impact we're doing. And I'm actually a part of that journey that Lego is also on. But sometimes you need to talk about it and help people to get through that frustration.
Would you be able to point to any common denominators between people who are able to manage that over the long term versus those who find that particularly difficult?
No, I don't think there are any common denominators from a personality point of view. I mean, I can see that the people that can take this very flexible way of working and knowing that the things that you do might not become anything, and handling that frustration and that stress, they're usually very agile-minded in some way. They're easy to stop and start. They can drop something and start something, and kind of be okay with that, kind of feeling like, okay, that I'm leaving that project now, and I'm moving on to this, and now that is my focus. And sometimes that's very hard. I can't point to a specific personality trait that I think is more or less. It's just something that after a couple of years, either you grow to love it, or you just say that this is not for me. And that can actually also change over time. People grow older, get more experienced, and just feel like, oh, I've done that. That's too hectic for me right now. I need some more structure and common goals and easy to decipher mission. And then you can leave for a while, maybe, I guess, and then come back. I mean, I've been switching from big companies personally from mainly consultancies, which is even more agile than an organization like this, and to big companies, back and forth. So I can kind of seen the both sides, and after a few years, I go like, oh, I miss I miss that part of being in a big structure, or I miss that part about being in a small design studio. So I guess it also is it's a personal thing when you switch.
That's interesting. You talk about switching because it calls to mind. I watched a talk that you gave at the conference about how children play in a very fluid
Mm.
way, and that they are constantly switching the kinds of play that they're doing. Whereas as adults, we find that more difficult. We tend to want to lock into one mode of play or work or whatever it is. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about whether or not you can see any lessons that we as adults can take from that childlike approach to play,
Mm.
where they might be transitioning from I think some of the terms you were using would say maybe constructive play to role playing to the nurturing. So they're taking out within any one play experience, they're transitioning from multiple different kinds of play, whereas we tend to find that more difficult as adults. But I feel like that flexible mindset and that ability to constantly shift the kinds of work that we're doing is potentially hugely
Mm.
valuable. Yeah, so just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, first, I think that we need to explain that. And Lego is, we're extremely serious about play and understanding kids. And we have full research departments just constantly hammering us with information about kids from all over the world and how they're behaving. And I think at one point, somebody in the organization said like, hey, we've been doing this for, what is it now, 87 years. And we've amassed this huge ball of information about kids and kids development. And couldn't we use that to kind of decipher or make a map in some way, or at least kind of, structure it in some way? So we have this map of, we use that information to create that map over different types of play. And it's constantly evolving and growing, but I mean, there are more than 30 types of play on that map. And of course a kid, and I think that was what I was talking about at that conference, was that kids don't see, those divisions. They move fluidly, and we can see what they're doing. So we can say, oh, they move from action play to nurture play, which is about taking care of something. And action play is maybe more getting that energy out of your body, smashing and crashing something. And we can point to that, but I mean, kids would never do that. They don't care about that. We care about it because then we can kind of, create a play experience that's specifically suited for that, child at that moment. But what I meant with, the change to when we grow up is I think that kids are in a constant exploration mode. That's their job, is to kind of explore themselves and the world and learn through play. They use play as a tool to understand things around them. So when we grow up, when we've gone through that exploration and we said, oh, this is my favorite type of play. I love building Lego. That's a construction type of play, and I really love that. So I'm going to make that my hobby. And that's what we call play when we're adults, right? Oh, no, I'm not playing, it's my hobby. But it's just really rewriting what it means, because it still gives us the same thing. It still gives us that joy, that immersion, that possibility to create our own world within that. So instead of hobby, we could just say play. Funnily, we're uncomfortable with that, but, so I think that's kind of what I was talking about, that kids, they move through play and different types of play just seamlessly, while adults kind of say, oh, I'm doing this. I am, playing with my dog, or I'm building something, and those are the things that I like. The rest I don't care about. So, I mean, if there is you could say a call to action maybe for adults is maybe to be a little bit more open and say that, oh, maybe I took the choices when I was young. Maybe I should explore it a little bit more again. I mean, I made the choice of not liking dogs, maybe if I don't like dogs, along the way to my adulthood. And maybe I should challenge that. Maybe I should challenge myself with the things with the things I think that I don't like.
Mm. And you mentioned that we're more comfortable saying this is my hobby than this is than using the word play. Why do you think we have that
Yes.
association?
I think it's something from our own very segmentation of being an adult. And being an adult is something you achieve through childhood. So once you're there, you can kind of look at the childhood and say, that's not me anymore. So I can't use the same way of acting. I can't use the same way of the same words, because then I haven't left. So that's why you can't use play, because that's what you did when you were a child. And people find other ways like hobby or sports, but they're really addressing the same need that you had as a child. It's more like you found the one that you kind of like the most, so that's the one that you're gonna proceed with. So I think it's something that we're uncomfortable once we grow into adulthood to recognize that we still have that child within us and need to distance us for a while. So I guess it's easier now. I'm a little bit more than 40 now, and maybe it becomes easier to kind of challenge that again, because I don't need to prove that I'm an adult now. I have kids. I think that maybe it's easier to embrace a little bit when you're past that young adulthood and kind of can look back and say, listen, I don't care what you think. I'm going to play.
Yeah. And earlier you said that there's a little bit of, I think the word you used was sorrow around not having as much time in your role as the design director to be as hands-on and as creative, and that you needed to find creative outlets elsewhere. Do you mind if I ask what those are?
Yeah. So, I mean, my hobbies.
Yeah.
No. What I play when I'm not at work, I build motorcycles.
Oh, wow. Right. Okay.
I do a lot of sketching and some painting, and I make music. So I kind of get my creative outlet in the small snippets of time that I have with small children. And it's really important for me to have those. Because as a creative, it truly feels like a sorrow. It feels like something inside you is dying. And it's painful. And I don't think that it's a good thing for somebody that feels like there is a creative part to your being to stop and to like be blinded by your career or blinded by money or things, those very grown-up things, and instead really understand yourself and knowing that if you have that creative urge, you cannot quench it. You cannot stop it. It will make you feel very, very bad. But on another interesting note is that when I did that transition into managing about 10 years ago, I felt that sorrow quite heavily for a while, because I really enjoyed being the hands-on designer. I was pretty good at it, but I was also good at leading. So then that step became natural. And I think that there was a moment in my career where I realized that I was designing something else, which made me very happy. It was a realization that it was about a person. And I remember interviewing him when we were doing I was building up the department. I was doing a lot of interviews. And this guy, he was so nervous during that interview that he was almost shaking. I mean, I had to stop the interview and just say, hey, listen, let's take a break. Let's go and get some coffee and calm down. And the reason why he was nervous was because he was unemployed, and he had been unemployed for a couple of years. So he kind of lost his self-confidence as a designer.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he was actually quite a good designer. So I ended up hiring him. I was just like, let's give this guy a chance. And that guy then, maybe 3-4 years later, he was the shining star of that design department that I was leading. He was so good that I could throw anything at him and he would just excel. And it was at that point I was just like, wow, I made that person grow. I took him from that shaking leaf in that interview, and somehow, I mean, he is the one that did the work, but somehow I managed to help him along the way to take those steps to become a star. So I designed him as a person, as a designer, as his role, occupation, and made him better. And I mean, that's what design is about, right? Improving things, creating new things that weren't there before. And I did that to a person. And from that point, that sorrow kind of left me, because I realized, like, yes, I'm not maybe designing a thing or a service anymore, but I'm actually designing people becoming better designers. So that helped me a lot in my process in becoming director of the Creative Play Lab.
That's fantastic. So would you have any advice for anyone who was in a similar position, who was feeling maybe that they didn't have space in their current role or whatever they are in their lives to express their own creative potential?
Yeah, I think the main advice is just to realize that you need it. You need to find your way of expressing it, and it might not be something that you're comfortable with, but just dive head first into something is the best. Like, go for it, not scratch the surface. Like, sign up for 3 months painting in Florence or something. I mean, really, don't just buy a couple of pencils and paper, but really, like, go for it. Again, I can take a pretty recent example from myself. Actually, I've mentioned music before, that I like to create music. Actually, I don't know anything about music. I never.
Oh, you said it with such
Yes,
confidence.
but I never learned to play an instrument. I don't have a sense of beat. I can't drum anything. Like, I can't even sing in tune with somebody else helping me. I have nothing really. But I've always been amazed about the creative process about music. And I think I was at a point about 5 years ago when I was just like, hell, I mean, I'm really interested in this, and I'm at the point looking for something that I could do as a creative output, because at that point I was living in an apartment, so couldn't build motorcycles. That was hard. So maybe I should go into music. I don't know anything. What should I do? So I kind of just went into a music store, and luckily at that point I had some cash, and just said, like, listen, I want to get into music. I have this money. What should I get? And the guy was like surprised, because I think that may be the first time he ever got that question. But he said, like, maybe you should get into electronic music, because that you don't need to play an instrument in the same way, and you can kind of rely on some knowledge you have about software and logic and all that in a different way. So okay, I said, and I bought a miniature studio set up and put it up at home. My wife going crazy. What the hell is this? Keyboards and speakers and synthesizers and software and everything. And I was just like, well, I mean, now it's here. and I paid a lot of money for it. So now I need to do it. I mean, it was kind of like pushing myself into doing something because otherwise it would be such a waste of time and money. So 5 years later, I'm at least at a level where I'm feeling like, oh, I can create things. I'm in no way good at it, but I at least feel I've reached a level where I can make something sound and somebody can listen to it and say, hey, that's interesting. So yeah, go head first. That's my advice.
Brilliant. I think there's something really inspiring about that. And also in the way that you said you found yourself shifting your focus to designing people, is that the medium may change, but the creative drive is still there. It just may be expressed in a medium that we aren't expecting or anticipating.
No, exactly. That's there was a big surprise to me that I could see it that way.
Yeah.
And also a big relief that I could change people. I could make people become better than I was.
Wonderful. Great. Magnus, do you have a creative challenge that listeners could take away?
Yeah. So I guess I already touched on it a little bit, but the challenge is to all the parents out there, and also anybody who's involving themselves with kids or taking care of kids. I see this happening a lot, and it's parents bringing their kids to the park or being outside in the garden, and there's a trampoline, and the kids are in there having fun, and you see the parents either on their phone or doing something else. And the challenge is engage yourself and involve yourself in that play. And I'm not saying just be on the trampoline. I'm saying go all in and play. Just throw yourself into that play and interact and look into those eyes of the kids and just forget whatever you were doing and what's going on at work or in your relationship or anything, and just be there for that moment and playing 100%. Because I've struggled with this as well as when I was a new parent. It's kind of you have this feeling of that you need to claim your own space, and one way of doing it is kind of activate the kids, and then you can have your time, and then you look at your phone, see what's up. But it's just ruining the whole opportunity of actually engulfing yourself in play. And I'll give you an example from yesterday night. I've been home alone with the kids for a couple of days. My wife's traveling, and I was exhausted. As you know, Jeremiah, my son broke his foot, and I was just like, I'm so tired. And my daughter was like, let's go on the trampoline. And I was like, please, I'm so tired. But then, looking at her and seeing that she really wanted me to come, I dragged myself out to the trampoline. And I knew it would happen, but it's so hard to do. And I engulfed myself in her play, just on that trampoline for half an hour. And I came back in and I felt like $1 million. I had energy. I had joy in my heart. My daughter was happy. And we went to bed, and she slept like a baby and I slept like a baby. And it was just because I did that. I went out and engulfed myself fully, leaving the phone behind, leaving everything behind, just being there, playing with her for that 30 minutes. And I want to see more parents doing that. Or actually, I want to see more parenting getting that experience. Because it's not about me, it's about them. Because it gives so much. Play gives so much, not just to kids, but to parents as well, and to anybody really. So engulf yourself in play. Don't be afraid of what neighbors think or anybody else think. Don't hide it as a hobby or anything. Just think of it as play and go do it.
That is brilliant. That is such a lovely, lovely story and a lovely call to action. Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, Magnus, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. This is brilliant. I love this idea of just full commitment to the experience of play, not doing it halfway, but really
No.
diving all the way in. And then same way with creativity. It's just like if you're going to try to learn about music, then go all in, really
Yeah.
go for it, and something comes out the other side. I think just that underlying message of commitment, full commitment, is really fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for making the time to speak with me. If people want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
Well, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Connect on that, and I'm really open to anybody connecting. Don't filter that much. So you'll find me under my name on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, Magnus, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey there. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Practical Creative. If you'd like to learn more about my guests, you can visit the Practical Creative website at thepracticalcreative.life, where you'll find links to all of their work and the previous episodes. And if you're looking for something to stimulate your own creative practice, check out the Creative Challenges page. You can also sign up to receive my challenge packs, where I put all the challenges from my guests in seasons 1 and 2 of the podcast into downloadable PDFs. Just head over to the website and check it out. And while you're there, be sure to have a look at the resources page, where I've compiled links to all the materials and services referenced by my guests, including books they've written on creativity and business, online courses, Facebook groups, and much, much more. And if you've enjoyed this episode of the Practical Creative Podcast, it would be fantastic if you would subscribe to the show or share it with a friend or even leave a review on iTunes. And I'd also genuinely love to hear what you found to be exciting or inspiring or even challenging about these conversations. You can find me on Instagram at Practical Creative. Until next time.